Hi, it's Tim Grant.
And Nicci MacLeod from the Right and Wrongs podcast.
This episode contains descriptions of harassment and stalking.
We'll explore themes related to verbal and emotional abuse, intimate partner abuse, highly offensive communications, and fraud. Listener discretion is strongly advised, as some content may be distressing.
Our discussion will, as always, include an in-depth analysis of how forensic linguistic techniques played a role in unravelling the truth behind these tragic events.
We hope you enjoy the show.
Righting Wrongs, an original podcast series from the Aston Institute for Forensic Linguistics. Season 2, Episode 6, Toxic Texts from the Tees Valley.
Welcome to Righting Wrongs, the podcast from AIFL, the Aston Institute for Forensic Linguistics at Aston University. We're all about improving the delivery of justice through the analysis of language. I'm Professor Tim Grant.
And I'm Dr Nicci MacLeod, Deputy Director of AIFL.
So, Nicci, this episode we'll be discussing one of your own cases. And we've described already what forensic linguistics is about in our earlier episodes. Our regular listeners, our wrong-uns, are quite familiar with what we discussed. But tell us about this case a little bit and how it fits in.
Okay, so this is a case that I became involved in 2021. It was due to go to trial in December 2022, and it was a case I worked on for Durham Constabulary. It featured on, as you may know, as listeners may have heard, I was on BBC Expert Witness.
Of course you were. No end to fame.
And one of those episodes was focused on this particular case. So it's the Series 4, Episode 14, which the sort of second half of that deals with this case in particular. Now, the victim actually featured on that programme and she was interviewed there, but so her name is obviously sort of in the public domain. We've changed her name today just because it didn't seem appropriate to sort of this far along after the case, we wouldn't want to risk sort of kind of triggering anything for her, and we obviously didn't want to we couldn't get in contact with her to ask if it was okay. So we thought, to be on the safe side, we'll anonymise her for the purposes of this podcast. And really, this was kind of a fairly straightforward sort of authorship analysis. Okay, we had a known set of writings from the suspect, and we had the questioned documents, so the texts that were anonymous, that the police suspected were from this particular suspect, but that's what they wanted sort of some kind of input into, really. So in many ways it was quite straightforward, but it was the circumstances of the case meant that it really, I felt that I actually played a kind of a key role in the delivery of justice. And obviously that's what we're all about, using language analysis to improve the delivery of justice. I worked for the prosecution, and prosecution work doesn't always feel like you're really contributing to justice. Sometimes you can just feel a bit of one sort of little cog in this huge machine of the system or the state, against the little guy. And you don't always necessarily feel that your role is particularly, that there's so much other kind of stuff going on that you don't really kind of feel as if you're really doing much in the way of contributing to the delivery of justice. But this was a bit different to that.
Yeah, I like the focus on this case that we've chosen to give it, because it's, in a sense, it's a lower key case than some of the high profile cases we've looked at, the cases of terrorism and murder and rape, but it's no less important for the victim.
No.
Yeah. The victim here, as we'll hear, was greatly assisted by the fact that you were able to deliver a language analysis in this case. And I think that sometimes we sort of have a background measure of a case, of its importance against the severity of the charge. And this, I think, demonstrates this really isn't the case. This is an important piece of work, and it's perhaps more typical of the work, if you like, of a jobbing forensic linguist.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that such a thing exists quite, but
No.
but if you're a forensic linguist, there's quite a lot of cases that you can get involved in of this level, of this type of case, which aren't at the very, very serious end of criminality involving things like, really severe sexual crime or murder or terrorism, but which are nevertheless really important for those involved. Yeah,
that's right. The offences with which he was charged were, like you say, not necessarily at the most serious end, but of course for the victim this was an incredibly it was a very serious matter, and she was very sort of seriously affected by it. And yeah, it was just good really to be able to contribute to getting what we will see as we go through these texts. But it was a nasty piece of work, and I'm really quite happy that I contributed to getting some justice for the victim in this case.
Okay, so let's hear about the case in some more detail. Let's open the case file.
August 2020, Darlington, North East England. Gemma Simpson, not her real name, has recently separated from her long-term partner, Stuart Bell, with whom she had been living in a house they jointly own. After moving out, Gemma agreed with Stuart that he would sell the house and give her a lump sum payment from the sale, as well as the car. Sometime later, Gemma's flat was broken into, bleach was poured over her clothes, and her mobile phone was smashed. Gemma alerted the police, and after an investigation, Stuart Bell was prosecuted and convicted of criminal damage. A restraining order was imposed, preventing Stuart from contacting Gemma. Gemma, however, began to receive vast numbers of abusive messages, which she believed were coming from Stuart, not least because many of the texts and emails were accompanied by photographs of Gemma from during their time together. Gemma also received messages containing videos. These showed that Gemma was being followed during her day-to-day activities, and further to this, her car was vandalised. Once again, Gemma contacted the police. It was not a straightforward matter for the police to establish whether it was Bell who was behind the messages. Unregistered phone numbers and email addresses had been used to send them, and while Telecom's data revealed they had all been sent from his IP address, Bell claimed that Gemma had sent them to herself while using his Wi-Fi and sitting outside his property. Investigating Officer Kerris Dawson approached Dr Nicci MacLeod for help.
So we heard there in the case file some of the actions that were taken, and we've already talked just a little bit about the effect of this on the victim. But do you want to tell us a bit more about that and why, therefore, this was an important case to get involved in?
Yeah, so this was really a campaign of harassment, and it was really, we've mentioned that it was obviously a serious matter for the victim. It had serious consequences for her sort of mental health. She said in an impact statement, I think this was when the case went to appeal, which was 2023, and we'll hear a bit about the appeal later on. But she said in an impact statement that it was that it coming back to court had given her, left her having suicidal feelings. She talked about, she said, I've been the recipient of a constant and unending rain of abuse and harassment from Stuart since the end of our relationship. I feel unsafe both at home, at work and in public. My mental health is also seriously depleting. I can no longer sleep as I live in a constant cycle of worry about what Stuart will do next. At one point, I was receiving anywhere between 10 to 30 messages or emails hounding me daily, so 10 to 30 a day. I felt like I couldn't go a day without being tortured by him. So clearly this has a really, really really sort of serious impact on her and her ability to go about her sort of day-to-day life. So yeah, that's why I kind of felt like it was an important one to get involved in. And we're actually going to be reading some extracts from those messages. So I feel like I should say now, like, this is obviously to illustrate the analysis, but some of them have some very graphic content and can be, I guess there's potential for them to be quite distressing. So I wanted to say that from the outset.
Yeah. So how were you involved in the case? What did the police bring to you? What were the policing questions that they asked you?
Okay, so it was, as we heard in the case file there, it was PC Kerris Dawson that approached me. In a nutshell, what she was asking for, she said she was looking for a linguistic analyst to look at series of texts and emails which were sent to the victim throughout a number of months and compare with emails which were sent to the officer in charge. That was herself, Kerris Dawson. So this was quite rare, really, because usually, I guess, when we want to get hold of this sort of a known sample from a suspect, quite often that might involve the police getting a warrant to go and sort of retrieve those texts or to sort of collect them some other way. And in this case, the suspect himself willingly provided, without his knowledge, but provided this set of known texts, because he had been writing to PC Kerris Dawson throughout this investigation, which we heard a bit about in the case file there, and from his own email address, signing them with his name. So no kind of doubt about the origins of that set of texts.
Yeah. So this is sort of almost contributing to his own prosecution in some ways by engaging with the police in this way.
Hoisted by his own petard.
Oh,
as they
excellent.
say.
Shakespeare reference, I believe, as you like it, that will be, because I studied that at O level.
Right, there we go. So he'd been writing to PC Kerris Dawson. He'd been calling her incompetent, saying that she wasn't, that she was being biased in her investigation into what he'd been up to essentially with this victim. And like I say, those were the known samples. We already had it ready made, basically, the known set. So just as a reminder for listeners, when we're dealing with these types of authorship analysis tasks, we talk about a known set, i.e. authored by the suspect, and we talk about a question set, which is the anonymous ones around which there is some dispute or question. So it was a fairly simple task, really. Like, compare these emails that have definitely come from Stuart Bell to Kerris Dawson, to the CPS and so on, compare those to this anonymous set of messages and emails, which have mostly been sent to Gemma, but we'll go on to sort of hear in a bit that actually some of these, some of the unknown ones had also been sent to Kerris Dawson as well. We'll hear a little bit more about the details.
Okay, so in terms of an authorship analysis, to sort of position it, this is what we sometimes refer to as a verification task. Mm-hmm. So it's not that there's a small set of potential authors. It's whether or not that that Stuart wrote these anonymous texts.
Yeah, exactly. So we've just got this one suspect. Can we rule him in or rule him out, essentially, is the question. PC Kerris Dawson had noticed that there were peculiarities about Bell's style. So she'd noticed this after having received several emails from him over several months. So she already had that hunch, and what she needed was some weight behind it, basically, some kind of expertise to either support or refute that hunch.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So quite often in casework, the police will come to you with what they believe is the answer and almost want the expert to back that up.
Yes.
And we've talked before about the independence of expertise and how that's an awkward position to start from, that you've got to start your analysis from an unbiased position and say, well, what is the evidence for or against that hypothesis? And sometimes it's that a family member will have recognised the writing style has changed or something like that. In this case, it's the investigating officer herself who's brought that to you. So I always find it interesting why we get approached, and very often it's someone says, well, there's something wrong with the language here. Can I get an expert to tell me that I'm right? Yeah.
That's it. And we do need to be careful, of course. We're not just there to verify somebody's opinion. We need to conduct our own analysis. And so, they occasionally should come to me with this sort of hunch that potentially, I think she probably fairly obvious that it definitely was him, but what she needed was somebody to actually kind of provide a scientific kind of opinion on that.
And of course, at this stage, you were unaware of the other evidence in the case, were you?
Yeah, exactly. Unaware completely. So I just had the texts to go on.
Okay, so, well, tell us a bit more about what the texts were and give us some detail around that.
Okay, so our known sample was 7 emails that had been sent to PC Kerris Dawson from Stuart Bell as part of this ongoing investigation. And then our question set, was 21 texts. Now, these were a mixture of emails and sort of instant messages. So they might have been WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or something. I'm not sure exactly, but they were sort of instant messaging format. So lots of that question set talked about Bell in the third person. So, clearly content-wise, we're purporting to be from someone other than Bell, essentially. Yeah. And also in that Q set, we had one that was not sent to Gemma, but was sent to PC Kerris Dawson and to the CPS, saying this one was claiming to be from Bell's nephew. It was saying, leave my uncle alone. He hasn't done anything wrong. This is all me. I've been doing this.
So just to get that straight, so he'd been writing to the police officer as himself.
Yes.
And then he may have been writing as a family member, his nephew, and saying, but writing to the police officer under a separate identity.
Yes,
to
exactly.
sort of provide corroboration or something like that.
Yes, essentially. Yeah, and essentially to sort of provide an explanation that was not Stuart Bell being responsible for what had for what Gemma had been receiving.
And there were some other texts, weren't there, that were in this sort of identity assumption mode where he was pretending to be someone else.
Yes, there were. So there were two of these emails were sent to a solicitor's firm, and these were purporting to be from Gemma, the victim. And this was to do with the house sale. So we heard a little bit in the case file there that there was a house that they co-owned that Stuart said he would sell and give her a lump sum. And so there was a couple of these emails that had been sent to a solicitor, which were suspected of not, in fact, having come from Gemma, even though they were signed as being from her, and saying that, you know, she was giving her approval for the sale of this house to go through, or something along those lines. Yeah.
Okay. So we started by saying this is sort of a straightforward case for a jobbing forensic linguist, but you've got quite a sort of confusion of texts here, of different types of text with different functions, different genres, and so on. So when you're starting your analysis, what are the thoughts going through your mind about what problems these may create?
Yeah. So we've got differences in terms of the mode of production. So emails are not the same as instant messages, and there'll be different. We use them for different purposes, so that's going to affect the way that we use language, but also the actual sort of communication systems themselves have differences. So they might have different settings in terms of autocorrections and spell checks and those kinds of things. So that's going to make a difference. And yeah, like mentioned, the different audiences here as well. So we have some that were being that, you know, we have the sort of known set, which were sent to the police officer and had a very specific purpose, which was, you know, leave me alone, you're rubbish at your job and I'm not, you know, blah, blah, blah. Whereas obviously it's the harassing communications that were being sent to Gemma, that's a very different purpose. And so again, that's going to have an influence on the way that we use language. So it's very important to kind of keep all these things in mind, the differences in genre, in purpose, in audience, because they're all going to have an effect on the type of language that's used.
Okay, so the types of messages that he might have sent, he or these other people may have sent, was it all towards the harassment charges, or were there other charges that were arising as well?
Okay, so there was a charge of fraud as well, because he attempted to sell the house without her as co-owner, without her permission. So there was that side of it as well. So that kind of explains where those solicitor emails come in.
So as well as the direct emotional abuse, there was this sort of financial abuse aspect too, which in law would count as a fraud.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
So let's move to hear some of the extracts so we can get a feel for these messages.
I'm aware you're dealing with the matter between mutant Gemma Simpson, ex-partner. You're aware I'm it to contact her, which I don't. Yet she is sending me letters through the mail. My now partner Natalie ripped it up as it affects her also, the contents of it. Clearly Gemma is a very scorned person and sent this, and clearly needs help with her drug issue. I've complained to the police, complaints regarding constantly getting arrested for false emails and texts. And now I'm being contacted by Gemma. See attached, which I tried to put back together after my partner Natalie didn't like the contents mentioned about her or her kids. You met her in the van that day. Hope you take action, as it's always been me accused when all I want is to be left alone. Clearly she has enemies, as she owes a lot of money to drug dealers, I'm told, and seems to be writing all sorts about myself and partner on social media. Perhaps you'll speak to her and tell her to back off. Stuart Bell.
So, Nicci, we've just heard that text there. So have you got any initial observations for us?
Okay, so there's some spelling mistakes in there, but in general, there's a fairly good command of the English language that, you know, but you can follow it, you can make sense of it, you don't sort of stumble over anything there. But something that is immediately noticeable is the complete lack of full stops. Like that text that was just read out there is one sentence. That entire thing is just one sentence. We have commas in there separating some of the clauses, but it's not really clear where you're supposed to take a breath in reading that. But we've got some quite common sort of errors there. So we've got your, Y-O-U-R for your, as in you are. Yeah, that's quite common. We see that a lot. That's not really something that's going to be particularly distinctive. We've got a frequent omission of the apostrophe. So where we heard I'm aware, there's no apostrophe in I'm. Don't need, there's no apostrophe in don't. How does this happen? I don't know if this, we're going back to what I was saying about the particular systems and them having different kind of rules for kind of autocorrection, different settings and so on. But I don't know how anybody can write things like I'm and can't without an apostrophe, because certainly I know that my WhatsApp will put it in for me.
Okay, yes, the ever encroaching grammar Nazi that is your phone system,
yes.
or something like that insists you write proper. But I think they learn your style,
right.
I think, and maybe create that consistency of style if you don't want to put in the apostrophes and so on. But it's interesting. So you mentioned already the spelling of your is quite common, and omission of apostrophes or is a sort of a quite common. I'm trying to avoid the language error. If you're a school teacher, that certainly would be but a point of style.
Yes.
Particularly in sort of messaging communications. So there's something about consistency, but common sort of for common things and consistency for distinctive things. And is this the sort of thing? So what I was thinking when you were going through that is this lack of use of full stops, that it's all one sentence. That's quite unusual in what's a 8 or 10 line paragraph on the page. Yeah. But these things are more common, but it all helps build a picture, I guess.
That's it. And the combination of these things, even if some of these things are quite common, it's not necessarily common for a particular common feature to occur in combination with a particular other common feature or with an uncommon feature. So it's the kind of the profile, if you like, the picture of the person's style that we build up that's going to be less common than the feature. And
I think that, so in Malcolm Coulthard, who was in our earlier episode, one of the Bentley episodes, he talks about a co-selection set. So it's the set of features that we select for, that we use, that can be individuating, can point to an individual's writing style, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. He didn't always omit apostrophes. So we had in that text that we just heard, won't get you, there is an apostrophe in won't. And so I thought it was quite an interesting thing to do initially, was to calculate what's the proportion of apostrophes that are omitted as compared to those that are included. And it looked to be roughly 50-50. It seemed like half of the time they were omitted.
So the opportunity for using an apostrophe was used sometimes and not other times, and that can be the style point rather than the complete absence or using it every time.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so that was from a known text. Now let's listen to a questioned text, an anonymous text. And this, I think, is...
So this was from messages sent to Gemma, and I do want to put a specific content warning on this one, that it's it's quite nasty in content.
Soon you will be more sick when he takes car back. Very soon your time will come when you realise what you really lost, and it all hits you. He is pitying you these days, calling him all sorts. Now hey, at the good times you loved him. You're gutted it's all gone. Believe me, your history to him, a bad dream, and he woke up, yet your nightmare is just about to start. Hope you have a good time with them needles in your arm. Only thing doing you, young stud, lol. See what people serve stew when them films are released. See what the viewers think then. You're a really ugly lass who wears a ton of shit on that battered face, with false teeth and black ones due to the drugs.
But what jumped out at you in terms of the stylistics of it?
Well, we can see plenty of those same features that we saw in the known text. So there's one full stop in this text, but you can see still that the sort of initial sentence all the way through to on that battered face. We do get a full stop there, but they're incredibly rare. I think that's the only full stop across all the question texts, in fact. I'd have to check the figures, but I think that's the case. So again, this kind of comma splicing, the use of commas to separate clauses. Again, we've got the your, Y-O-U-R for your, you are. And again, we've got erratic apostrophes. So some apostrophes where we would expect them, they are there, and other times where we would expect them, they have been omitted.
And just because I've got the text in front of me here, Another feature that is very apparent on the page, but isn't in the reading, is there's multiple commas in a row in the middle of the text. So we've got after young stud lol, there's 4 commas there on the page, which is quite unusual, I guess.
That's right.
And there's another bit there with 2 commas in a row. So it's as if his comma key is got stuck down, or he's hitting it again and again and again.
So we've got your nightmare is just about to start, and worth noting actually that 2 is spelt O here, where we would expect it to be TO, and that's followed by 2 commas in a row, and then later on, as you say, we've got 4 commas in a row, which again is something that I would expect autocorrect to catch, but obviously that's not happened.
Maybe he's somehow turned it off.
Yeah.
So let's drill down into the data a bit more, starting with this known set. Having heard a little bit of the data, where did you go with this?
Okay, so this known set, as we've mentioned, these were sent to PC Kerris Dawson. She was the officer in charge. She was in charge of the investigation into him following the break-in at the flat. So we heard in the case file that Gemma had her flat broken into, her phone was smashed, bleach was poured over her clothes, and that incident resulted in a restraining order against Stuart Bell. So he was known to the police, and it was Kerris Dawson that was in charge of that investigation. And then these messages started. So the police were already pursuing him in relation to the break-in and to just as the messages started. So he wrote several emails to Kerris. The general tone was kind of leave me alone, leave my new partner alone. Gemma is the one that's harassing me rather than the other way around. She's on drugs. You're bad at your job. You're incompetent. Why don't you go and catch proper criminals?
So attacking PC Dawson's investigative skills.
Yes,
and attitude to the case altogether.
Yes, that's right.
Makes me wonder whether the police officers, the investigating officers' gender is part of that attack or not, or whether he would have whoever was investigating.
I think he would have. I don't get the impression he was a great fan of the police in general, but okay. I also I do think that factored in. Actually, when we come to looking at one of the anonymous emails that was sent to PC Kerris Dawson, she's addressed as WPC Dawson, which is a very outdated way of referring to female police officers. There's no such thing as a WPC anymore. Everyone's PC.
Indeed, indeed. That's interesting. So we've already heard a bit of the first of the known set, Stuart Bell's email to PC Dawson. And so let's hear just a little bit more from that known set to set up some of the patterns that you're looking at.
I'm again informed you've attended my house, presumably more rubbish from the ex-Gemma Simpson. You're aware I work away and I'm not back until next Friday. I'm also more than happy to attend the police station voluntary. You don't need to park around the corner and also further down the road in a van. Give me a time and I'll arrange for a solicitor to be there to meet me. As I said, I work aware, as you're aware. So banging on my door won't get you an answer. Stuart Bell.
So let's talk a little bit about how you performed the analysis. You've familiarised yourself with the text and some features have jumped out. What was the first step?
So what we're really needing to do is we look at the known text first so that we can sort of draw up a linguistic profile of Stuart Bell as a writer, or his style, shall we say, like how he uses language. So again, we noticed this erratic apostrophe use. So there doesn't really seem to be a pattern to it. There's not particular words where it's always included and other particular words where it's always excluded. It's a mixture, regardless of what the word is. In this particular extract, we have the word I'm that appears twice with an apostrophe and once without, just simply I am. And we also have an occurrence of won't that has one. But there doesn't seem to be any sort of rule behind it.
Yeah, and I can see that there's a don't without it. So so it's quite a random use of apostrophe selection. There's not a rule behind it.
No, there's no rule. Again, we've got the you're for your. So you're aware, Y-O-U-R, when what we're looking for, well, what we would expect is the you are, you apostrophe R-E. Once again, we've got no full stops at all. So all the clauses, the only sort of separation is with commas. And we've got voluntary, so VOLUNTRY for voluntarily.
Okay, so what you're doing with your analysis in the known set is you're looking for features there that are repeated, but you're also looking for them to be repeated across texts. So it's not just within a text. So that feature about voluntary for voluntarily, it occurred across two different texts. You're building up this pattern of what the writer does consistently across texts, as well as maybe two or three times within a text.
Yes, that's right. And these features were evident across the known set. So the lack of full stops, I think, is probably the most marked feature of these. The sort of 50-50 split between whether apostrophes are included or not. That was that, and that's across all of the known texts.
Seems you love my house, but as per usual, I'll give you the up-to-date information. Firstly, I'm a HGV driver, and regardless home many times you knock on our door or park round the corner, I'm not there, hence the terminology tramping. And I definitely will not be rushing back to hear more alleged rubbish about the ex, and that she has been contacted again, no doubt. Same old rubbish. When will it actually sink in? I'm remotely not bothered about her. I'm quite happy with my new partner, so no, I'm definitely not rushing back because you wish to speak to me. It's so petty you think it was a murder case. How many police officers need to attend over a message being sent via email or text? Pathetic, it really is. When my contract expires in 19 days, I will return home and gladly pay you a visit at the police station, and you can tell me all the alleged rubbish that is being said. Until then, I suggest you stop.
Having heard that text, what more do we add to the profile from this?
Okay, so we've got some of the same stuff again. The erratic use of apostrophe. We've got none in I'm. We've got 4 occurrences of that. But also note that with the occurrences of I'm, the I is not capitalised. That seems to be consistently lowercase I. We've got the 2 for 2, which is something that we mentioned before. And we have the word been, B-E-E-N, in slots where we would expect being. So over a message being sent and rubbish being said, where the context tells us that what he's going for is being.
That's nice, isn't it? Because I like these kind of spelling errors because they tell you something about the person's pronunciation.
Yes.
Very often
right,
it feels like this is how he says the word. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And again, we got no full stops. So it's just sort of adding more sort of support to these to these features as being sort of typical of his style.
Lol, I wasn't there. My daughter uses car. But hey, thanks for 7B days, extra £1,000 in my account. See you in 2 weeks. Bloody text. You're so bad at your job.
So there's a bit more here to add to this profile you're building.
Yeah, we've got more support for this your being a sort of a typical feature of the style, so Y-O-U-R. And what we see here, and I think you picked it up in one of the earlier texts actually, is the multiple punctuation marks, but specifically commas. So what we can see here is that we've got 3 examples of sort of comma clusters, if you like. So my daughter uses car, but hey, comma, comma. In my account, comma, space, comma, in that case. And then see you in 2 weeks, comma, comma. So that's really that's a very marked feature. That's not something I see regularly.
So as well as consistency within text and across texts, your point here is that this is really quite distinctive usage. And this is, again, we're talking about the known text here. So when you're talking about a profile of Bell's style, his idiolect is a word we've used in the past. This feature of the use of commas in little clusters of 2, and on one occasion previously 4 commas in a cluster. this is something that strikes you as being distinctive.
Yeah, that's right. And it's important to mention, as we have sort of mentioned this really, but that none of those features in isolation is really going to be particularly helpful. They're not necessarily uncommon. Some of them more common than others, but we wouldn't ideally we wouldn't rely on one feature to sort of.
So the your for your is really, really common, isn't it? Where people use the wrong version with or without apostrophes of the word your.
Yeah, so they're common errors, and we can talk about the difference between an error and a mistake. I think a lot of people think these are synonyms, but errors are those where the user has sort of internalized this particular variant, so this particular misspelling, should we say, and they believe it to be the accurate one, and that's an error. A mistake is just a slip up. You accidentally do something and you realize it's wrong when you look back at it. So that's the difference. So what we're looking at here, I guess we could classify as errors, but without being too prescriptive about it.
Okay, so in my own emails, you've received too many emails from me over the years, I think, and they're absolutely full of typos, but that's because I have way too many emails to send and receive. But it's not that I can't spell. I should like to put that out there.
Okay.
So for me, those typos and misspellings, which if I had the time and energy to go back and read and correct all my emails, they wouldn't be there. In contrast to those typos, if I didn't know the difference of use between the version you are with the apostrophe, so your, Y-O-U, apostrophe R-E, and your, Y-O-U-R as a possessive pronoun, if I didn't know those differences and I just used your for you are, then that would count as an error.
Yes, that's what we classify as an error. Yes, exactly. So as we've mentioned, really it's the combination of these, whether you want to call them errors or non-standard features, whatever you want to call them, it's the combination of those that is going to be much less common. And the more features you add to that, the less and less common that particular combination is going to become. And so what I did was I decided that my threshold was 5. So if a feature occurred 5 times or more, then I kind of marked it as being a distinctive feature.
So there's this set of features that you're interested in, and as part of your analysis, you actually produce a table where you're looking at how frequently these occur across the 7 known texts, and this performs your profile for you. Do you want to talk about how you devised that table a bit?
Yeah, so this is just the known text. So as you say, we've got the 7 emails, and if a feature, so for example, if the word if you are, rather than being spelt you apostrophe re, was spelt your, Y-O-U-R, if that happened, I would make a tally, essentially. So it turned out that happened across these 7 texts. There were 8 occurrences of your being spelt Y-O-U-R. And I did this for, there were plenty of features, and we've picked out some of them here. But what I decided to do was have a threshold of 5. So if it occurred 5 or more times across these 7 emails, I would mark it as being a distinctive feature of the style, because there are others that occurred only once. So, for example, he said I seen for I saw once, so the use of seen as the past tense of see, but that only occurred once, so it's not really going to tell us anything.
So this is the criteria of consistency. How consistent is Bell in using these, and if it's occurring once, you can't say that it's a consistent usage.
That's right.
And you had a threshold, an arbitrary threshold, a rule of thumb that it had to occur about 5 times or more to count as a consistent feature of Bell's.
Yeah, that's right. Because of course we're talking about quite a small set of texts. It's only 7, and I had to kind of draw the line somewhere, and I thought 5 is as good a place as any. Okay, so something that's also kind of shown on this table. I mean, maybe I should just go through all the features. So we mentioned been for being, and that occurred 5 times across all the texts. It occurred. There were 2 texts where it occurred twice, and there was another text where it occurred once. So it didn't have to occur in every single text. It just needed to be something that occurred more than 5 times across all the texts. Also, the multiple commas, as we've mentioned, this occurred 6 times across the 7 emails. And this lack of full stops. So if it was an email that had no full stops in it whatsoever, then it got a score of 1, basically. So 6 of these 7 emails did not contain any full stops.
So only in one email was there a full stop.
There was 1 full stop in one email, and the others were completely devoid of full stops. Yeah. And the apostrophe omission. So I mentioned that it was roughly 50-50. And so we've got some scores here for each of the texts. But overall, across the 7 texts, 35 places where we would expect to see an apostrophe, 18 of those were omitted. So we're talking roughly half of the occurrences.
Let's listen to the first disputed email. It's quite long, but let's listen to it all.
Stu put your note on FB. You mailed to him, getting done by a young male stud, lol, instead of wrinkle him. Seen the state of your body, a look of a 100-year-old with black teeth. You really are a disgrace. I'm told you look like you've been hit by a bus in the morning and stink, and people laughing at him. Yeah, okay, at least his lass is not a cokehead. That's a sure fact. And has her kids as priority. What's your excuse? You don't even have a son living with you, as you dad can't trust you. And knows what you are, a dirty skank. Natalie, well, she is 100 times better than you. You're in a cuckoo world. Drugs are getting to you. You have lost everything, and you think getting done by a dirty smackhead like you bothers him. You're a joke, Gemma. And soon you'll be more sick when he takes car back. Very soon. Your time will come when you realise what you really lost, and it all hits you. He is pitying you these days, calling him all sorts now, At the good times you loved him. You're gutted, it's all gone. Believe me, you're history to him, a bad dream, and he woke up, yet your nightmare is just about to start. Hope you have a good time with them needles in your arm. Only thing doing you, young stud, lol. See what people say of Stu when them films are released. See what the viewers think then. You're a really ugly lass who wears a ton of shit on that battered face, with false teeth and black ones due to the drugs. Who the fuck would look at you and think doable? Some posshead in the boot and shoe. Your level. Stu will always be the better person. That is a fact. Good thing is, he got rid of the shit attached to him, and his plans are falling well into place. Take care, you sad, 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 sad person. Sent from iPhone.
This first email to Gemma talks about Stuart Bell in the third person.
That's right. So content-wise, it's sort of alleging to not be from Stuart Bell, but Gemma was pretty sure that it was him. In light of everything that she'd kind of been through, everything that had been going on, and when she handed these to the police, PC Kerris Dawson, she recognised the distinctive writing style. Obviously, she's been receiving emails from Stuart Bell for quite some time as part of this investigation, so she was quite familiar with his style, and she recognised this style in the email that Gemma handed to her. So essentially, she was thinking and she needed an expert opinion to back up this. She sort of had an inkling, and Gemma obviously was convinced that she knew who it was that was sending it. And so that's how I became involved, really. So in that particular message that we've just heard, we've got 1 full stop in that whole email. We have comma clusters. So, for example, only thing doing you, young stud, lol, comma, 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 comma. For example, I think there's
another one a bit further down, or two there. You and think doable, comma, comma. Some poss head in the boot and shoe, comma, comma, and so on.
Yeah. So that's again something that's coming up that we've already said is quite an unusual feature. Again, we've got your for your, and again we've got erratic apostrophes. Let's just pick out some examples of that. Okay, so we have what's your excuse with no apostrophe in what's. you don't even have a son living with you, and there is an apostrophe in don't. So again, we've got like a mixture of omission and inclusion. We've got a lack of capitalisation of lots of words, particularly I'm is very noticeable. So I'm told you look like you've been hit by a bus. And we've got no capitalisation of the I as well as the apostrophe missing in I'm.
Let's listen to the next email.
Can't believe what I heard from the family and what you have done. I looked up to you, Gemma. Stu gave you all them years and you are a witness against the person who loved you so much, and Jessica. I'm told you have a bad drug problem also. Why can't you see drugs ruin your life, honey? You both were so happy. He looked after you well. So many people were jealous of how good you both were, and it resorts to you being a witness against him. I so hope you're right in what you're doing, because you will look behind you in the future and think, what have I done? And he will never forgive you. I'm aware he strayed, but bloody heck, you lied every week to his face, I'm told. You're worse than him. You both need to cool off and then chat before too much damage is caused. He is a good lad, you know that. Just hates being badly done by and won't take it. Honestly, love, sort things out before it's too late for you both. Hope you do, as you were so good as a couple.
Now let's talk through some of the linguistic features that occur in this email.
Okay, so on our apostrophes, we have can't without an apostrophe, I'm without, but we also have can't and won't with the apostrophes. So we've got, again, the sort of 50-50 split. Again, we've got a lack of caps. So again, we've got on I'm a lowercase I, but not all the time. Again, so I so looked up to you. We do have a capitalised I there. Can't believe what I have heard from the family. We do have a capitalised I there, but it's something that is not done consistently.
Okay, I can't see looking through that. There's not the comma cluster feature, so there are some features here and some features that aren't here. What evidence did you have, or did you consider that these might be from different individuals? Did you know they were from the same email account or something of that sort, or was that part of your briefing, or were you just given them as a set? I was just given them as a set. So they were, I think they were all from the same email address. The ones that were emails, obviously some of these were, we'll see in a minute that there were some that were sent from a phone that wasn't, a mobile phone that wasn't registered to anybody. So I didn't actually consider the possibility that they'd come from somewhere else, because they were provided as a set. There was sort of nothing to suggest that there were going to be multiple. Yeah, and in a sense that is in your instruction. The police are saying there's these set, and can you analyse them in that way? Yeah, I mean, and I did say, well, we'll get to my conclusions in a bit. There was one of the questioned emails that just did not have enough of the other features to allow me to say that it matched the style of Stuart Bell. So I just simply concluded that I can't give an opinion on that particular email, but the others, there was enough in them to link them. So it's interesting where you would say, I can't give an opinion on that one, or this one looks significantly different in style, to exclude it from being. It wasn't that, it was just you couldn't give the opinion. I couldn't give the opinion. Okay, and there's another example here. There's an example of the being feature. Yeah, resorts to you being a witness against him. Yes. Yeah, so where we'd expect being. Yeah. Okay, and then go on. Sorry, and finally, which we've mentioned before with the known set, we've got the word to with double O. You lied every week to his face, where we'd obviously expect the other two there. Okay, so those were emails sent to Gemma. Let's now listen to one that was sent to PC Dawson investigating the case.
My name is Daniel Kress. I'm the nephew of Stuart Bell. I'm contacting you all to update you on the disagreement that has been going on between my uncle Stuart. I've added the CPS and Magistrates Court to this email, as I believe the police only focus on a conviction and not the truth, so hope the police will look into the matter properly regarding Stuart Bell and his ex-partner Gemma Simpson. Firstly, I know again Gemma Simpson is again making allegations towards my uncle Stuart, saying he has messaged her and breached a bail condition. This is not true. I have been sending her messages telling her mainly what a fool she is, and sending her pics of Stuart and his new partner, Natalie Newman, and how happy they are, and for Gemma to stop slandering him all over social media and causing trouble for him, and to stop threatening his partner, Natalie Newman. You WPC Kerris and the rest of the police are fully aware that Gemma Simpson contacts both Stuart and Natalie at odd hours and sends them threatening messages. Yet the police do nothing because she is playing a victim, and you're aware she has threatened Stuart's partner, Natalie Newman, twice. In light of everything, the police seem to be focused only on a conviction and not the actual truth. So please, WPC Kerris, come and speak to me about the messages, because I believe it's free speech, and at no time was Gemma Simpson threatened. Only the true facts were sent to her. Daniel Cress.
So this is purportedly a message from Bell's nephew saying, "Leave poor old Uncle Stuart alone. It was me who done it." What were your observations on this message?
Yeah, so this was sent to PC Dawson, to the CPS, and copied in the Magistrates Court as well. Essentially saying like I've been responsible for all the messages, and I think it says towards the end there that it's not harassment, this is free speech or something, bizarre like that. So purportedly from the nephew, right, Daniel Cress. But notice, okay, we have here this whole message, and it was actually quite a lot longer than that. And in the whole thing, there are no full stops. So we're quite a sort of page and a half email with no full stops, just commas. You're for your, we've got that again. And we've got our erratic apostrophization again. So we have I'm without an apostrophe. We also have I'm with an apostrophe. We have I'm with a capital I. We also have I'm with a lowercase I. We have it's with a missing apostrophe, but there are other words where it has been included. Lack of capitalization, so CPS, and here, like I mentioned before, we've got WPC Kerris, so a quite sort of what's the word I'm looking for?
Pejorative?
I guess quite a pejorative way of referring to female police officer, and dated way of referring to them.
Yeah.
But also her name is not capitalized. WPC itself, CPS, none of these receive capital letters.
Yeah. And so finally, for looking at the texts, let's, on WPC Kerris, it's notable that he's also just using her first name in this email, isn't it? So it's not WPC Dawson or even WPC Kerris Dawson. It's Kerris, which could be something in the form of address there that's expressive of attitude.
And just, contempt.
Contempt or something.
Yeah.
Let's listen to the next email.
Suggest you read all text, as it's going to be said once. You fucked Stu over well. You used every excuse you can to blame him. You constantly lied to him about stopping the drugs, yet every time you had a party at his house, you were on them. And that lad believed you had stopped. You really took the piss, Gemma. He loved you so much and gave you everything and looked after you. He says you changed as a person and seen you were not his old Gemma. Yet you told him it was him. He made a mistake, yet you made lots and constantly lied about them. Seen you Instagram profile. Seems other victims not giving you the time either now. You need to see that you need to come away from the coke.
So you mentioned the challenges around genre differences earlier in our discussion. Can you talk a little bit about that and why this presents some challenge?
Yeah, so we've got issues potentially around genre, or maybe more to do with the mode of production. It seems like there are far fewer instances of these multiple commas that we saw in the emails. There's far fewer of those in the text messages. Potentially, is that something to do with autocorrect? Is there perhaps something that's kind of correcting them within the messaging client?
So maybe just talk. So by mode of production, what we mean can be a variety of things, I guess. It can be the device that you're writing on. Are you writing on a laptop with a proper keyboard? Are you writing on a phone where you're tapping letters on a screen? But it can also mean other things. But in this, that's probably the principal difference that you're looking at.
Yeah, so it could be down to laptop versus phone. I think a good deal of the emails were sent by mobile phone,
okay.
But I'm not sure that they all were. But also the client, the sort of client that you're using to produce the message itself. So are we looking at WhatsApp? Are we looking at Outlook? Are we looking at Facebook Messenger? They're going to have different conventions.
And different sort of dictionaries for autocorrect and different systems for correcting or enabling multiple commas, for example.
Yeah. So we could be looking at something like that. We could, of course, be looking at, repeatedly pressing the comma button on a mobile phone keypad just seems like it would be maybe a bit more effort than if you held it down on a keyboard, for example.
Okay.
That's something that, that those kinds of considerations. But yeah, like I say, some of the emails were sent from a phone too, so that's not necessarily an explanation, but these are things that we might want to think about.
So the challenges that we're talking about then are about the different sources of variation in language. And one source why my language might vary across contexts is the way I'm producing the text.
Yeah, exactly. So there are loads of reasons why our language changes in different situations. So obviously the purpose, what are we trying to do with our language? Who are we addressing? So there were emails to the solicitor here where we would expect the tone to be quite different to messages, to sort of abusive messages being sent to Gemma. But the email to the solicitor actually had a lot of these same sort of features. So there were obviously some of these features that were persisting across different tones and so on. So
okay, so in spite of these genre and mode of production differences, the features that you identified as being Bell's linguistic features were there even in the messaging.
That's right, and persisted across different audiences and so on. They were still there.
Talk then about the comparison of the features in the anonymous text to the known texts.
There was remarkable overlap here. So the features that I pulled out as being distinctive for the question set, so the anonymous text, were as follows. We had your for your, to with double O for to, multiple commas, so these kind of comma clusters that we've mentioned, lack of full stops, apostrophe omission, which again was at a rate of roughly 50-50, and again, I had this threshold of 5, so they needed to occur at least 5 across all 29 messages as it was here. And we've even got some here that they didn't actually make that threshold, so I haven't kind of highlighted them as being distinctive to this set, but they are actually present here and were sort of marked as significant in the known text.
Okay, so you're spotting these points of consistency across the two sets, across the known and the question set. How did you start expressing your conclusions then? What did you write in your report?
Okay, so my conclusions were that, firstly, that the style of Q1 to Q13 and Q15 to Q21, so this was taking out Q14 because I didn't think there was enough in that message for me to form an opinion.
So this is your numbering scheme for the question text.
So you had 21 question text, and there were 21 of them, and so they're numbered Q1 through to Q21. And I was able to say that for all but one of these, I said that the style was entirely consistent with that of the K set, so the known set, those emails that were sent to PC Dawson. I said there are several significant consistencies and no inconsistencies. And I also pulled out as the most marked feature the multiple commas, so these clusters 2, 3, 4 sometimes of commas in a row. And that was shared between the K and Q sets. And I said I don't consider that to be a common feature. It's not something that I've really come across before. So
in these conclusions, you're talking about the consistency between the two sets of your selected features, and also something about the distinctiveness of that feature and some of the other features as part of that collection. I guess the natural question for someone working for the defence is, but when there would be other writers out there who would make this same set of errors?
There likely are other writers out there who would make this same set of errors, but none of them were in the frame. This guy was in the frame. And what, really what I could have done is to look at, because his claim was that Gemma had wrote these to herself, right? So perhaps something that I could have done is to look at Gemma's known style and kind of compare that. But that's not something that I was asked to do. I mean, I'm sure if that had come up, if that had come up, I would have, but I've got a feeling that her style probably wasn't anything like this. But yeah, it's there was other evidence pointing towards him, and there were circumstantial things that were pointing towards him, and he was in that position, and he was. There was a very, very clear match between his known style and the questioned ones.
So that's interesting in this case about the role of the linguistics in this case, because your linguistic evidence really is only about consistency between the known and the questioned. Like you say, you didn't consider anyone else, so it's this verification task. Yeah. And your conclusion isn't really that strong. It's only saying that there's consistency.
That's right. That's right.
But what the job of the prosecuting barristers and the police behind them, the police investigators behind them is to build the case from different sorts of evidence. And that case sort of said, for all sorts of other reasons, this person's likely. And then you come along and say, and the language
and
is
it
consistent.
Matches. Yeah.
And
exactly.
so it's that combination that enabled the court in this case to arrive at a decision. And it's interesting because it's not a very strong idea of idiolect. You're not claiming this is the only person in the world who writes like this. You don't have to make that claim, I guess.
No, that's right. In cases like this, that's not really, we don't really need to go there. I mean, I'm not saying, and I actually said this in my report, we can't identify individuals responsible for authoring text, but I can identify styles. And I can say this style is the same in this set of documents as it is in this one. So I did say, should another suspect be named as having authored the Q set or potentially authoring the Q set, then I'll need to analyse their style and see if it's consistent or not.
So that's interesting, and obviously wholly responsible to write that in the report itself. And it's almost a challenge to the defence to say, well, you asked me to analyse someone else, and I will, and we'll see whether these style points are there or something like that.
Yeah, if you want me to analyse Gemma's writing, then then I'll go for it.
And your hunch is that they wouldn't have gone there because in fact, that wouldn't have helped you.
That's right.
Okay, so what's the outcome in the case then? Is that the case closed?
No, so he wasn't content with this kind of relentless abuse, and so, as I mentioned, he did attempt to defraud her. So solicitors contacted her to confirm that the sale of your house has gone through, and this was the first she'd heard of it. She hadn't signed any papers.
That's quite a communication, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So what had happened was Stuart Bell had forged her signature on documents transferring ownership solely to him. And his older sister actually had witnessed those. She'd been there as witness to witness those signatures as being Gemma's, which they weren't. So they called a handwriting expert in. So this is Kate Barr, who I believe is based in Birmingham, actually, a consultancy in Birmingham. And it was her job to look at these forged signatures, and she concluded that, yes, indeed, the way that they had been produced did not match Gemma's usual signature.
Okay, that's interesting. So do you know whether she also said it matched Bell's handwriting, or was it just that it was inconsistent with Gemma's?
I think it was just that it was inconsistent with Gemma's.
So that what I was thinking, that's interesting. So you had a finding of consistency but not identification, and she had a finding of inconsistency. And it's all jigsaw pieces to the overall case, isn't it? I guess, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's
right. So obviously this led to a prosecution of Bell. Did you go to court? Did you testify in person?
So I was given notice to attend Teesside Crown Court, so that's in Middlesbrough, and that was due on the 6th of December 2022. Booked myself a nice little Airbnb on the front in Seaham.
Nice, yes.
Beautiful little place to sort of work from for the week so that I could be on hand to go off to court. And I emailed the sort of afternoon before I was due to be there because I hadn't heard anything. I didn't know who I was supposed to meet or anything. Nobody had my phone number. I thought, I don't know what's going on here. And so I emailed the police witness care unit. And they got back to me about 4:30 or 5 o'clock saying, oh, he's changed his plea. He's literally just changed his plea. So tomorrow you will not be required. There will be no trial.
Yeah, this is part of the frustrations of any kind of expert witness work. So some of this is it's sort of unavoidable in our system. So an accused, a defendant, can change their plea from not guilty to guilty at any point in the trial process, and then suddenly you're not needed.
Yeah.
And some of it is the sort of the strains of the system, whereby the communication isn't always great, and you can turn up to court and then everyone else knew that you weren't required. And I had a case earlier this year where I turned up every day for 5 days and was being told, oh yes, you'll be later today, you'll be the afternoon, oh no, it's been delayed, you'll be tomorrow morning. And it can just get very, very frustrating sometimes being an expert witness. Yeah. But I have to ask, did you make use of the Airbnb for a week?
Oh yes, I stayed there. Yes, absolutely. It was lovely little spot to work. Okay. And it was.
So you had other work. You weren't just sat.
Oh
with
no,
your
I was
feet
just
up on
looking at the sea. No, I did have things to do.
I'm pleased to hear you made the most of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he changed his plea to guilty, and that was he was guilty of perverting the course of justice, stalking, and breaching a restraining order, and he was sentenced to 4 years and 4 months in prison.
Okay, so in terms of the case overall, we've talked about it sort of being a jigsaw type case. What was your evaluation of how important the linguistic analysis was in maybe helping him to change his mind and change his plea?
Well, obviously, so I wasn't party to the discussions that his defence team had with him, which I assume would have gone along the lines of there's this evidence and there's this evidence, and that potentially was my linguistic analysis. It would have been the handwriting expert report as well. So I can't know for sure how central those were in getting him to change his plea, but according to PC Dawson, she did say on BBC Expert Witness, she said Nicci's evidence was key, and she said ultimately that conviction came down to Nicci.
There you go.
So I think, and obviously Kate Barr's evidence was also key to that. And I don't know. I mean, we can't know for sure, but I get the impression that once this is all kind of built up, that he was perhaps advised that there's no point.
So I think we've discussed before that we don't have official plea bargaining for cases in the UK, but there is this idea of discount off the sentence, and if you plead guilty at your first opportunity, you get maximum discount.
Yes.
And then you can get some discount right up until just before the trial starts, as seems to have happened in this case. And probably the advice given by the defence barrister was, this seems to be a really strong case against you. Yeah. This is your chance. Plea now, and you will get a lesser sentence than if the trial starts. So I mean, this is supposition, but maybe there was some kind of conversation like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but in spite of the guilty plea, Bell then appealed his sentence. So what was that about?
He did. So he didn't. He obviously didn't appeal the verdict because he pled guilty, but it was the sentence that he was given that he was appealing.
He was saying it was sort of unduly harsh or something.
Yes, that's right. And the appeal court partially agreed. So they did reduce his overall time from 52 months, so the 4 years, 4 months that he originally got, that was taken down to 3 years. There was some parts. There were some of the offences for which he was convicted where the appeal court upheld the original sentence, but there were others where they did think it had been unduly harsh because of how they might sort of categorise the stalking, for example, and they decided it wasn't as serious as they'd first thought. So
this is where a trial judge, the first judge in the actual trial, has to follow sentencing guidelines, and there's some discretion in there, but there's also quite a lot of rules they have to follow, depending on what the charges could be categorized as, and both exacerbating and sort of mitigating factors and so on. And somewhere in that calculation, the appeal court felt that there was some room to move the sentence down.
Yeah, that's right. So, for example, for the fraud conviction, because there hadn't actually been any financial loss because he failed in his attempt
it was attempted fraud rather than actual fraud.
Yeah, so they took that down because of that, and there were the way that the kind of harassment had been categorised, they decided actually that didn't warrant the sentence that had originally been imposed, and so on. So overall, it was reduced down to 3 years.
So what's your feeling about the case, though?
Well, I have to say, right, I've, without wanting to say too much, I found myself a victim of this kind of harassment in recent weeks. So obviously I'm not going to kind of give away any details about that at all, but it has given me a sort of renewed pride in my involvement in this case, and that it must have actually been because it was very tricky. He was claiming that she was sending these messages to herself. I've got to say, in my case as well, the person tried sending messages from another person's account, came in to be there, and I thought, you know what I do for a job? Why is this even being
well, some aren't the smartest, are they?
Well, yeah. Anyway, so that it's kind of given me. It's clear how serious and how just harrowing this was for this victim, and it was clear that the conviction. And I think he's probably almost out now, if he's not out already. But nevertheless, I hopefully kind of think twice. It's great. It feels great to have put a spanner in the works, because men that do this kind of thing, they don't just do it once. There was always going to be another kind of potential victim, and it just feels good to have been able to sort of be part of that effort to say, well, if you act this way, you will be punished, you will be locked up, and
it's a distressingly sad theme of righting wrongs, isn't it? That what men do to women, and like we said at the start, that it thankfully didn't result in more direct violence or anything like that. If you're on this pathway, we know that sort of repeated harassment and abuse leads to violence, and then sadly can lead to deaths and murders. So anything that serves justice earlier in that pathway,
throwing a spanner in the works.
That's a nice way of thinking about it. So I think your contribution in this case, because quite often we also talk about how, as a linguist, with just part of the evidence, we don't want to take too much credit for a verdict. Right. But here you've got the police officer saying that it was a key contribution, not the only contribution, but a key contribution. Yeah. So I think you quite rightly can take pride in this case. So if you've got a question for Nicci about this case or about anything else on righting wrongs, remember you can get in touch with the show via email, and we have a question and answers edition at the end of each series. The email is writingwrongs@aston.ac.uk.
If you've been affected by any of the themes in this week's episode, please consider contacting the resources in the episode description.
This has been Righting Wrongs, an original podcast series from the Aston Institute for Forensic Linguistics at Aston University. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.